Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 7 o'clock main news. In tonight's headlines, police in Iraq said a roadside bomb explodes in central Baghdad today, killing at least 3 people and wounding 9. Israeli military forces extend their military operation in the West Bank for the 3rd day. The Egyptian president heads the first meeting of the newly formed government after it took the constitutional oath. And a 5th round of talks between Iran and world powers resumes in Vienna with the aim of finalizing an agreement over Iran's nuclear program. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah received this morning at Bayan Palace the chairman and board members of the National Union of Kuwait Students US branch. His Highness the Emir urged the students to exert more effort and get the best education they can to contribute to the future and development of their homeland and wish them further success. The meeting was attended by the Deputy Minister of Amir Diwan Affairs Sheikh Ali Jarrah Al-Sabah. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah sent a cable of congratulations to His Excellency the President of the Republic of Iceland, Olafur Ragnar Grimsson, on the occasion of his country's National Day. His Highness the Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah sent a cable of congratulations to His Excellency the President of the Republic of Iceland, Olafur Ragnar Grimsson, on the occasion of his country's National Day. His Highness Sheikh Jaber Al-Mbarak Al-Hamad Al-Sabah, the Prime Minister, also sent a similar cable. His Highness the Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah received this morning at Bayan Palace the newly appointed Ambassador of Togo to Kuwait, Mohammed Sa Urusama, on the occasion of assuming his new post. The meeting was attended by the Under-Secretary of His Highness the Crown Prince's Diwan for Media Affairs, Sheikh Mbarak Al-Hmoud Al-Salman Al-Sabah, and the Diwan's Under-Secretary for Protocol and Ceremonies Affairs, Sheikh Mbarak Sabah Al-Salim Al-Hmoud Al-Sabah. The Deputy Chief of the National Guard, Sheikh Mish'al Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, stressed the significance of cooperating with the Arab Open University, or the AOU, to achieve the goals listed in the National Guard Strategic Plan on developing the human element. This came in a speech delivered by Sheikh Mish'al Al-Ahmed after signing a cooperation protocol between the National Guard General Presidency and the AOU on promoting mutual cooperation in educational, scientific and technical domains. The protocol was signed by the AOU Director, former Minister of Education and former Minister of Higher Education, Dr. Moudi Abdulaziz Al-Hmoud, and the Acting National Guard Under-Secretary General, Engineer Hashim Abdurazak Rifai. The Deputy Chief of the National Guard then expressed pleasure over the signing of this protocol that will boost bilateral relations between both sides in several fields. Chairman of the Arab Inter-Parliamentary Union and National Assembly Speaker Marzouk Ali Al-Ghanem held talks today with Speaker of the Lebanese Parliament Nabih Berri on the humanitarian situation resulting from the Syrian crisis in the presence of Lebanese Prime Minister Tamam Slam. During the meeting, both sides affirmed Kuwait's vital role in supporting these Syrian refugees in different ways and also covered the latest regional developments in Syria, Iraq and Palestine, in addition to tackling mutual relations between the Kuwaiti and Lebanese parliaments. The talks were attended by members of the parliamentary delegation accompanying Speaker Al-Ghanem, including MPs Dr. Mohammed Al-Hwela, Dr. Yusuf Zalzala and Saif Al-Azmi, as well as the chairman of the International Islamic Charitable Organization, envoy of the UN Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and advisor at the Emir Diwan, Dr. Abdullah Ma'toug Al-Ma'toug, and Kuwait's ambassador to Lebanon, Abdul Alid Al-Qna'i. During a luncheon hosted in his honour by Speaker Berri, Speaker Al-Ghanem stressed the continuation of Kuwait's role in dealing with the Syrian crisis, away from political affairs. Al-Ghanem then reiterated Kuwait's keenness on boosting bilateral relations with Lebanon, affirming Kuwait's support for the brotherly Arab country and its people in all political circumstances and crises. Addressing the case of Syrian refugees in Lebanon, Speaker Al-Ghanem said he has witnessed the suffering of the displaced people who are posing a major economic burden on Lebanon, affirming that Kuwait will continue aiding the Syrian refugees in all possible ways. For his part, Speaker Berri thanked Speaker Al-Ghanem for his country's support to Lebanon and its sponsoring of a donor conference for the Syrian refugees in Lebanon, while highlighting the role of the Kuwait Fund and the GCC in this issue. Police in Iraq said a roadside bomb exploded in central Baghdad today, killing at least 3 people and wounding 9. The blast comes amid growing unrest in Iraq, with insurgents pushing further into a province northeast of the capital. The Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant last week captured a large swath of territory in a lightning offensive in northern Iraq. This comes as the insurgents pushed further into a province northeast of Baghdad as the central district of the capital stood empty. The Al-Qaeda-inspired group has vowed to march to Baghdad, Karbala and Najaf in the worst threat to Iraq's stability since US troops left in 2011. UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon warned today that sectarian violence could blow up to huge proportions as Iraq's instability deepens. Ban said he was deeply disturbed at reports of likely war crimes, terrorist attacks and other atrocities as the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, or the ISIL, looks to link areas under its control on both sides of the Iraq-Syria border. The UN chief said that he had urged the government of Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki to take a more inclusive approach.
What is important at this time is that the Iraqi government should have one state, whether it is a Sunni or Shiite or Kurds. They should be able to harmoniously live together, respecting and upholding human rights and values of the United Nations. That's the basic essence.
Israeli military forces extended their military operation in the West Bank for the 3rd day today as it broke into houses in Nablus city overnight and carried out another extensive arrest campaign and sabotaged property of citizens. In Hebron, the siege continues with heavy military presence in the city. One house was demolished and dozens of people were arrested. More in this report by Fatma Abdul Karim from Ramallah.
Israel renewed its overnight operations in the West Bank for the 3rd consecutive night in its military operation claimed to be for the search of the 3 missing settlers who have been missing since 5 days. Last night, the Israeli military's focus shifted to the city of Nablus, where Israeli forces carried out a limited land operation targeting houses in the Balata refugee camp.
4th or 5th soldiers raided our house, asking about my children, roamed around the house, then arrested my son and nephew. They also destroyed the house.
They terrified us. Dozens of soldiers barged in with dogs. They asked me about my sons and asked me to confess over a store in my son's house. The toll of arrests in the past 2 days is 200 Palestinians from Nablus, Hebron, Tulkarem, Ramallah, Jenin and Beit Lahem, and demolished a house in Idna, south of Hebron. Israeli military officials said through media reports that the operation is now no more limited to finding the 3 missing settlers, but also targeting what it described as the terror infrastructure of Hamas movement in the West Bank, and therefore it is escalating its military offensives.
Netanyahu's extremist government is trying to mix the card and escalate its attack with a war on the Palestinian people. It's creating pretext for this war through the policy of killing our sons.
The Palestinian Authority denounced the Israeli practices and called on the Palestinians not to respond with violence. The closure around the Palestinian city continues for the 4th day in a row now, and the tension in the West Bank is on the rise. The military operation is expected to last for a few more days, but the scope of this operation remains unknown to Palestinians. Fatma Abdul Karim, Kuwait TV, Ramallah, Palestine.
Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi headed today the first meeting of the newly formed government under Prime Minister Ibrahim Mahlab after it took the constitutional oath. The meeting reviewed tasks and assignments that are included in the coming period's action plan. The newly formed government involves 34 portfolios, 20 ministers from Mahlar's previous government have retained their posts, while 13 new figures were appointed. A new ministry under the name of the Ministry of Urban Development to work in the slum area field was introduced, while the Ministries of Information and Administrative Development were cancelled. Officials in Pakistan say clashes between police and supporters of an anti-government cleric, Canada-based Tahirul Qadri, have killed at least 5 people in the country's east. There were conflicting accounts of the death toll in Lahore today, as the chief of the city's police said 5 protesters were killed and the head of the Jinnah hospital said the hospital had received 8 bodies so far. Qadri had announced he would return to Pakistan on June 23rd to rally against the government of Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. Meanwhile, Pakistan Defence Minister Khawaja Asif told reporters that Pakistan launched a military operation on Sunday in Aresta province near the border with Afghanistan in an attempt to finish off militants in the area once and for all, after negotiations with the Pakistani Taliban failed. Prime Minister Sharif defended the operation to members of parliament yesterday and vowed that the operation would continue until terrorism was eliminated from the country. A 5th round of talks between Tehran and world powers resumed in Vienna today with the aim of finalizing an agreement curbing Iran's nuclear program. Officials will try in the talks to narrow differences and keep alive hopes of ending a decade-old nuclear dispute by late July, despite doubts the self-imposed deadline can be met. The talks, coordinated by European Union Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton, stumbled during the previous round in mid-May as both sides accused the other of lacking realism in their demands. The powers want Iran to significantly scale back its uranium enrichment program, denying it any capability to move quickly to production of a nuclear bomb. Iran denies any ambition to produce such a weapon and demands that crippling economic sanctions, which were eased slightly in recent months, be lifted entirely. British Foreign Secretary William Hague said today that the United Kingdom will reopen its embassy in Iran, which was closed in 2011 after hardliners overran the building and ransacked it. In a written statement, Hague informed Parliament he is satisfied that British embassy personnel would be safe in the Iranian capital Tehran and that diplomats would be allowed to work without hindrance.
I had by written statement this morning that following discussions with the Iranian Foreign Minister, we will be reopening our embassy in Tehran. Initially, this will be with a small diplomatic team, but it is an important step forward in our bilateral relations with Iran. In addition to discussing our common interests, we will continue to press Iran to reach a deal with us and the other nations of the E3+3 on its nuclear program and to promote stability in the region by ending its support for sectarian groups.
Ukraine's Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk condemned today Russia's move to halt natural gas deliveries to Ukraine, calling it a plan to destroy the country's independence. Speaking to lawmakers in Kiev, Yatsenyuk said the Ukrainian government believes the gas agreement is part of the Russian plan for aggression. Further aggravating already tense relations between Russia and Ukraine, the Russian energy giant Gazprom cut off natural gas supplies to its neighbour yesterday, warning that the reduction could diminish the amount of gas flowing to Europe. Meanwhile, despite Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko's proposal for holding early local elections in the eastern Donetsk and Luhansk regions, a group of protesters staged today a rally outside the Ukrainian parliament, calling on the country's politicians to agree on early parliamentary elections. And moving to local financial news, the 3 main indices of the Kuwait Stock Exchange ended the trading session with a negative performance as the price index lost 30 points to reach 7,078 points. The KSX 15 index also lost 10 points and settled at the level of 1,164 points. The share of Al Nawadi Holding Company was the top gainer of the day, while that of the Mashar Holding Company was the top decliner. Yesterday's World Cup matches saw Germany thrash Portugal with a 4-0 victory, while Iran and Nigeria battled it out to reach a stalemate with a final score of 0-0, and the USA headed off against Ghana to end with a 2-1 win. The first of today's matches pins Algeria off Belgium in the Belo Horizonte in the opening contest in Group H. Belgium is viewed as the favourite to win this group by many soccer insiders, while Algeria is seen as the team that is most likely to finish last. On the other hand, the World Cup favourites Brazil will be expected to defeat Mexico in the second round of Group A matches in Fortaleza. but their Latin neighbours have no reason to feel overawed. The Mexicans have won big matches against Brazil before, beating them 4-3 in the final of the Confederations Cup in 1999 and more recently in the Olympic final in London. The home side, however, have won 22 of the 38 previous encounters, including the most recent match almost exactly a year ago in the same stadium in the Confederations Cup when Brazil romped home more comfortably than the 2-0 score line suggests. And for a chance to see our reports again, please visit our YouTube channel at MOI Kuwait News. And to recap tonight's news, here are the headlines once again. Police in Iraq said a roadside bomb explodes in central Baghdad today, killing at least 3 people and wounding 9. Israeli military forces extend their military operation in the West Bank for the 3rd day. Egyptian president heads the first meeting of the newly formed government that it took after it took the constitutional oath. And a 5th round of talks between Iran and world powers resumes in Vienna with the aim of finalizing an agreement over Iran's nuclear program. Thank you for joining us.